Today we are strapping in for what can really only be described as a clash of absolute titans. We're looking at a V10 heavyweight title fight, and it pits two completely wildly different automotive philosophies against each other. On one side, you've got the highly strung, incredibly sophisticated German engineering of the BMW M5, and on the other, the brute force, unapologetic American muscle of the Dodge Viper. These are two iconic machines that achieve speed in completely opposite ways. One requires a literal secret handshake just to launch, while the other just asks for a really heavy right foot. It's a fascinating matchup, and we're going to break down exactly what happens when these two V10 legends meet on the tarmac. So, let's just quickly look at the fight card for today. 1. Meet the contenders. 2. The standing quarter mile. 3. The rolling races. 4. The ultimate brake test. And finally, 5. The final verdict. Section 1. Meet the contenders. German precision versus American muscle. Let's get right into it. Okay, so before we look at any actual race data, we've really got to understand what we're working with here, because the engineering philosophies are night and day. The Dodge Viper Mark V ACR packs this massive 8.4-liter naturally aspirated V10. Now, this specific one has been tuned to roughly 650 horsepower, and it's putting all that power down through a traditional, chunky, 6-speed manual gearbox. Plus, it only weighs 1,500 kilos. Now, over in the BMW E60 M5, it uses a much smaller 5.0-liter V10, pushing out 507 horsepower. It's also quite a bit heavier, sitting at 1,755 kilos, and it uses this really complex 7-speed sequential manual gearbox, or SMG. So right out of the gate, the BMW is significantly heavier and way down on power compared to the Viper's massive displacement. But, specs on paper really only tell half the story. The rivalry here is intense. Before the rubber even met the road, the smack talk was already flying. The BMW driver proudly pointed out, and I love this, at the time this car was built, BMW was racing V10 F1 cars. What was Dodge doing? Building trucks. It's just a hilarious job, really highlighting that high-tech M5 pedigree versus the Viper's, let's say, slightly agricultural blue-collar roots. But a truck engine shoved into a lightweight chassis? Well, as we'll soon see, that is absolutely nothing to laugh at. Now, this is where it gets kind of crazy. Look at the sheer complexity of German engineering from this era. Using the BMW M5's launch control is literally a secret handshake. I'm not kidding. First, you have to input a specific button combination. Then push and hold the gear lever forward. Then release the brake. Then push the accelerator. And then finally flick the gear lever away to actually launch. It is this bizarre, completely robotized sequence. Contrast that with the Viper, where the launch control is literally just your left foot on a heavy clutch pedal and your right foot mashing the gas. Moving right along to Section 2, the standing quarter-mile showdown, the classic drag race. So what happens when we actually put these philosophies to the test? Well, the M5 immediately struggles off the line. And this is the reality of racing these older, highly strung technical marvels. They don't always cooperate. Instead of a nice, clean launch, the BMW driver is met with massive wheel spin and an engine that just bogs right down. And to make matters worse, the dash lights up like a Christmas tree. You get that dreaded bong sound, warning of sudden ABS and drive control system failures, which severely restricts the car's performance right when it needs it the most. And the result of those early technical hiccups? Well, the BMW driver pretty much summed it up perfectly. I've been absolutely demolished. Because, let's face it, when you botch a launch against a 650 horsepower Viper, there is absolutely no catching up. The Viper's torque just carries it straight off to the horizon, while the BMW is left sitting there blinking warning lights on the runway. But wait, check this out. Once the BMW finally cleared the errors, hooked up the traction, and got a clean run, the results were genuinely jaw-dropping. The Dodge Viper crossed the quarter-mile line in 12.3 seconds, and the heavy, lower-horsepowered BMW M5 12.5 seconds. That is an incredibly narrow margin. Think about it. Despite a massive 255 kilo weight penalty and nearly 150 less horsepower, once that German V10 is finally in its optimal rev range, it claws back around with terrifying efficiency. All right, Section 3, the rolling races. We're talking torque versus gearing. Okay, so take launch traction out of the equation for a second, and these engine characteristics are wildly exposed. Starting from 50 miles per hour in third gear, the Viper's massive low-end torque gives it this instant, undeniable advantage. It has a relatively low redline, just 6,500 RPM, but honestly, it simply doesn't need to spin fast to make power. The BMW M5, on the other hand, It's an absolute screamer with an 8,200 RPM redline, but it drastically lacks that lower-end punch. So because they started at a lower speed in third gear, the high-revving BMW was caught completely outside its power band. It's an immediate, brutal disadvantage, while the Viper's massive torque just instantly rips it forward. 120 miles per hour. I want you to really let that number sink in for a second. During these rolling runs, the Viper reached 120 miles per hour while still only in third gear. No way, right? The incredibly long gear ratios on the Dodge mean that once it finds traction, it just pulls and pulls and pulls without ever needing to waste precious fractions of a second shifting gears. Seriously, watching the Viper pull away in the rolling race, the BMW driver just looked over and said, "That thing's like a Saturn V. Once it gets going, the boosters are lit." The sheer ferocity of that acceleration is kind of hard to put into words. The Viper might not be the most sophisticated machine on the planet, but its raw, unadulterated acceleration, it is literally aerospace grade. Section 4. The ultimate brake test. 100 miles per hour down to absolute zero. Now, the Dodge Viper absolutely dominated this test, stopping significantly shorter than the BMW M5. But why? Well, it essentially boils down to 4 key factors. First, this particular Viper featured upgraded Gen 5 brakes. Second, it's running tires that are incredibly wide, which provides these massive contact patches with the runway. Third, the driver was manually threshold braking without the interference of an ABS system. But most importantly, it comes down to mass. The Viper has a 255-kilo weight advantage. Less mass equals less momentum to arrest, and that gives the Dodge massive stopping superiority over the much heavier German saloon. And that brings us to Section 5, the final verdict and reliability. High tolerance versus highly strong. So we've seen all the numbers, right? But what does it actually mean to live with these V10 monsters day in and day out? Well, the Dodge is tough as old boots. It's an unstressed, high-tolerance American muscle car. It can do these heavy acceleration pulls all day long simply because its massive engine just isn't working that hard to generate power. The BMW M5, conversely, is highly strong German precision. To squeeze 507 horsepower out of a 5-liter naturally aspirated engine requires spinning that thing all the way to 8,200 RPM. And the true cost of that complicated engineering? Well, it's notorious for catastrophic rod-bearing failures, constant dash warnings, and super delicate automated gearboxes. So, that leaves us with an incredibly important question to ponder. Given the F1-derived performance, but the constant anxiety of delicate SMG gearboxes and potential massive engine bills, is the highly strung German V10 really worth it? Or does the blue-collar peace of mind offered by a brutal American truck engine make it the actual better driver's car? It's the ultimate debate of complex precision versus raw displacement. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what drives us forward.